Cafe Networking Podcast promotes successful business experts. I'm Tom Rioch, known as the King of Networking, connecting people throughout the world from my podcast studio in Brazil. Today we talk with Nick Gausling, and he's joining us from Houston, Texas. Nick Gausling is a fractional executive and business consultant at Rami Group, who optimizes specialty B2C companies. So Nick, is brick and mortar still relevant in today's digital-first retail environment?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Tom. It absolutely is still relevant. You know, people have been predicting the downfall of brick and mortar retail for many, many years, and it hasn't happened and hasn't come anywhere close to happening. You know, the closest thing we probably saw to that was a very brief period during COVID, the early days of COVID, right? When a lot of brick and mortar stores simply couldn't operate in the traditional way.
Right.
But now, in the years since, brick and mortar has seen a big resurgence. So e-commerce has continued to grow, no doubt, and will continue to be a big part of overall retail sales. But brick and mortar is still a major factor. It's still the dominant factor in retail. And really, I think the key word that people should keep in mind is the word omni-channel. And a lot of people, when they hear the term, if they've ever heard it at all, think it's talking about, oh, omni-channel means e-commerce. No, omni-channel means every channel. And the principle is that if you're really any kind of retailer, but particularly a specialty retailer, which is primarily like what I work with in my practice. Specialty retailer is a type of retailer that focuses on one type of product category. So it could be like a furniture specialty retailer, a vitamin shop and nutritional supplements, or a music store. Those are specialty retailers. So particularly in that kind of category, but really any retail, really, you want to be omni-channel, meaning you need to have a presence and the ability to sell through product wherever your customers happen to be.
Right.
So that means, you know, you probably need a robust brick and mortar environment. You also need to have e-commerce capabilities, social selling, which is it's sort of the ability to sell on social media through live events and things. That's becoming much more prominent. Going to trade shows and state fairs and all these sorts of things. In-person sales are still very popular that way. So,
but all those that you mentioned, yes, and people like to be with people.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's still a social element to the shopping experience. Now, there's some people, granted, who they want to do absolutely everything online. They never want to talk to a person. They only want to do 100% e-commerce, but that's a very small proportion of the population. And there's some people that are the complete opposite of that. Most people are something in between. Sometimes you want to go down to the store, grab something right now. You want to check it out. You want to be able to test it, feel it, see it. Maybe you need it right away and you can't wait for an e-commerce delivery. Other times, maybe you just want the convenience of ordering online. So it's just about being in touch with your customer, knowing where they are, and being able to make those types of connections and sales.
I agree with you because as a consumer myself, I would say I enjoy it. During COVID, it was that we couldn't go anywhere, so you didn't go. But what I do, my wife and I, we still like to just roam around. We go into many of these specialty shops that you mentioned, and just to see things. That's where you see something new. You can see the old stuff or whatever's there, but anything new is there. And you can look and see. Something maybe, wasn't even thinking about buying, but you go and say, look at this, look what somebody came up with. The paint shop, just a different way to hold a paintbrush. So there's a lot of little things that you see being out there. Obviously, you can find that on internet, but it's sort of just roaming around is part of what I like to do from a shopping experience.
Yeah, and in some e-commerce channels, they've tried to replicate that a little bit. It's very hard to do unless you have like a substantial amount of customer data. So Amazon, for example, is pretty good at that, even though that still misfires quite a bit. But for your typical retailer, they're not going to be able to replicate that same type of experience. It's something that has to happen in a store. I was in Costco the other day with my wife walking around, and same kind of thing. The layout of a Costco, which is not a specialty store, it's definitely a big box store, but it is that experience. It's meant to have you just kind of roam around. There's not a necessarily set, this thing is on this aisle. You're meant to kind of just wander the store and see what you find. And it's a great way to discover new products and things, like you mentioned.
Now, your client, who is your client? It's the store owner? Is it the franchisee? Who is it?
Yeah, so it's the business itself that is in specialty business to consumer. So that would be like a specialty retailers, as well as direct to consumer brands that aren't necessarily selling through retail, but are selling with a direct relationship to their consumer. So those are predominantly what I focus in. It's what my background and a lot of my executive experience has been in.
And that's anywhere in the States?
Yeah, I mean, I'm predominantly focused on the United States, but technically able to work with clients from almost anywhere.
And retail, as retail, I see that here in Brazil, things sort of become the same in ways of approaching. Everybody's looking for something new from the retailer side. How do you get people in, and how do you keep them in, and how do you show them? So that sort of works in different languages, but it works the same way.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's a lot of principles of things like how to optimize your operations, how to improve the customer experience, how to think about how you're marketing to the customer, how you're reaching to the customer, how you're selling to the customer. A lot of it really is universal. There's definitely cultural nuance. I mean, even in the United States, you go to different regions and you'll see cultural nuance, but a lot of the principles are the same, because we're all people, and it's fundamental psychology in a lot of ways.
Very good. Well, Nick, I want to thank you. How can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so everything they need is on my website, nickgausling.com. That links through to my newsletter if you want to stay in touch with my business content, as well as if they are in that type of business, a specialty business to consumer company looking for some help, they can schedule a complimentary meeting with me right there from the website.
Very good. So very individualized.
Absolutely.
So thanks again, Nick.
Thank you, Tom.
And for our listeners, it is Nick Gausling. First name is N-I-C-K. The last name G-A-U-S-L-I-N-G. You find him at his site, which is nickgausling.com. You also find him on LinkedIn as Nick Gausling. Cafe Networking is brought to us by Focus MI Market Intelligence, an agricultural market research specialist in Brazil. More information at their site, www.focusmi.com. Talk to Tom, talk to the world. Thanks for listening. Until the next time here at Cafe and Networking Podcast.